Welcome to the WP Builds podcast, bringing you the latest news from the WordPress community. Now, welcome your hosts, David Wormsley and Nathan Wrigley.
Hello there and welcome to the WP Builds podcast. This is episode number 147, entitled What Does It Mean to Fail? It was published on Thursday, the 26th of September 2019. My name's Nathan Wrigley from pictureandword.co.uk, a small web development agency based in the north of England, and I'll be joined a little bit later by David Wormsley from davidwormsley.com, because we have fortnightly discussion episodes. That's David and I chatting through a subject. That's what you've got today. And then the alternate weeks we have an interview episode, or at least we try to stick to that. So we're going to be talking about what does it mean to fail, but I'll come to that a little bit later. Before we begin, just a few bits of housekeeping. If you wouldn't mind heading over to wpbuilds.com and looking at the links at the top. The first link is the subscribe link, and if you click on that, please join any of the methods that we use to keep in touch with our community. Be most grateful. The first couple at the top are a set of email lists that you can subscribe to. One gives you updates about the podcast, and the news that we release on a Monday. The other one gives you updates to WordPress deals as soon as we hear about them. And then there's links to things like Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and so on. So you can subscribe to us on your favorite podcast player. And then we've got a very thriving Facebook group, 2.2 thousand members, all very friendly. And there's things like our YouTube channel and Twitter feed and so on and so forth. So please go into that, wpbuilds.com/subscribe. Or what about this one? wpbuilds.com/deals. I keep saying it's a bit like Black Friday, but every day of the week. There's a whole ton of WordPress plugins and themes with coupon codes just for our community. So if you're in the market for something this week, go and check that out. And also wpbuilds.com/advertise if you would like to put your product or service in front of a WordPress specific audience. A bit like these guys have done. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by the Page Builder Framework. Do you use a page builder to create your websites? Well, the Page Builder Framework is a mobile, responsive and lightning-fast WordPress theme that works with Beaver Builder, Elementor, Breezy and other page builders. With its endless customization options in the WordPress Customizer, it's the perfect fit for you or your agency. Go to wp-pagebuilderframework.com today. It was also sponsored by WP Feedback. Are client communications eating up all of your time? If so, check out WP Feedback, a visual feedback tool for WordPress that is specifically designed to get you and your clients onto the same page. Check it out at wpfeedback.co. And Cloudways. Cloudways is a managed cloud-based hosting platform for WordPress. Unlike others, you get to choose the server from top cloud providers like Google Cloud, Amazon, and DigitalOcean. There are no restrictions on the number of websites per server. Try Cloudways using the promo code WPBuilds and get $20 free hosting credit. And we thank all of our sponsors for their support of the WP Builds podcast. It enables us to put it on each and every week. Just so that you know, we put this out on a Thursday, but we also do two things every Monday. We put out our weekly WordPress news, where I sum up the news in about 20 or 30 minutes. It comes out very early in the morning, so you could listen to it on your Monday morning commute and get all the WordPress news from the previous week. And then at 2 p.m. in the Facebook group and various other places, we put out a live video where myself and a few special guests talk about the WordPress news for that week. And it's very light-hearted and jolly good fun. So join us for that. And if you go to wpbuilds.com/live, you'll be able to find out more. Right. What about today's episode? David and I talking about what does it mean to fail? Well, this is an interesting subject, isn't it? Because first of all, what does it literally mean to fail? We have to sort of set the ground rules a little bit. So David and I do exactly that. We talk about what our versions of failure are. We also talk about, is this a financial thing? Is it something to do with, the work that your boss is providing you? Is it more in your control than that? It's just a fabulous discussion, talking about a subject that we very rarely get into. It's quite interesting retrospective. There's quite a few tales from our past about things which went wrong and also things which went right. And at the end of the day, it kind of comes down, I think, to happiness and freedom and those kind of things. So it's a lovely, lovely conversational episode, and I hope you enjoy it.
This discussion we're calling Failing in Business. And Nathan, are we going to add whatever? Because we've talked about this and we're kind of quite chilled about it, aren't we now?
Yeah, we've had quite a long chat about this, and failing in business or whatever. So it could be in any walk of life. And yeah, it's going to be broad and probably a little bit cursory. We don't really touch on anything too deeply, but the way this conversation started, we were thinking about the topic of how you kind of might cope if things aren't working out so well, or if that discussion is ever had, those kind of things. We've never touched a topic like this before. We've never touched a topic where I think it could have quite such an emotional reaction, especially if you've been through this before. So I suppose caveat emptor, we are just talking off the cuff and describing our thoughts, and we're not claiming to be great successes in any way.
Yeah, and it's quite a good one for me in a way, because if this is the closest I've come, I would think, this year to failing at doing web design. I've got less customers this year, and there's a good chance that I'll end up spending more than I actually earned this year. So I quite like the topic, but I'm quite buoyant about the whole thing.
Maybe give us a bit of context to that. Why has this particular year been a troublesome, difficult one?
Well, I've been going for sort of 5 years with the help of a colleague who's been sending most of the work to me. So now the change is that I've got to go after the clients, and I'm getting work in, but I've not really I haven't prepared for this. I haven't done my own marketing the way I should do. So there's less work coming in.
So you had a pipeline where the work rather would be kind of fed toward you, and you didn't have to go looking for it in any way. And suddenly that fire hose dropped off the radar, and suddenly you're left having to figure out the same business, but a new strategy for acquiring new business.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, it makes you rethink things when things change like that, because I've not prepared, if you like, to do the correct marketing to get new people in. I am now, but in that kind of period, fortunately, I kind of knew it was happening and was quite happy to say, okay, we're not going to earn much while I get this sorted out. But otherwise, and it still could be the case, 1 year down the line, I could say, I'm just not doing this any longer. I failed. So, it's kind of relevant.
Just concentrating on that for a minute. You don't have to go into too much detail, I suppose, but what kind of things have you put in place in order to try and change your business around so that you are now in charge of getting new customers? What kind of things have you been busy with over the last period?
Yeah, well, I've really been thinking again who we're going for, and also about how I'm going to approach getting new business in. So we're doing a combination of inbound and outbound marketing, and we should have a conversation about this, because I think it'll be quite interesting. So maybe I'll stay clear of that, but largely it's just about coming up with some new ideas about how to get clients in, which is, that's a favorite topic, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we must do it at some point.
Yeah. I mean, it's one that just about every podcast in the WordPress space needs to have had done at some point. So you've had this period where you've recognised that the work has dried up and so on. Are you the kind of person that does it bother you? Thinking about this. Oh my goodness, the sky is falling in. Panic! The world is ending. Or are you able to cope with that because of your situation and the way you've got your savings perhaps, or the way you've got your online life sorted, and the relationships you've got around you and where you're living and all those things?
Yeah, absolutely. It's all of those things. And I think I'm not typical of most people because of the fact that I've kind of wandered into this, and we did at least have enough in terms of saving to know that we'll be okay with the travel that we do and the lower cost of living to be able to manage for some time. So there's always that kind of buffer. And do you know what? I don't think I would have been happy to have gone into doing client websites as kind of my main income. If I didn't have that, I think I would be panicking. So I'm sure there are plenty of people who are in a worse situation who are, because the money's running out and they've got more responsibilities than I have. So I don't want to sound glib, when I'm talking about this, but yeah, I'm not worried. I mean, I'm quite buoyant because of the industry we're in, because I think there's so many opportunities available for us that I'm not worried about the sort of temporary loss in income.
Yeah. Do you worry about, there's a whole raft of things that you could worry about. You could worry about the bank balance. You could worry about the fact that you haven't had any new clients. You could worry about also, the impact on your family and those kind of things. Do any of them stick with you? Are you a worrier, or are you able to sort of have a lot of perspective? You said there that you were quite positive and so on. So it sounds to me like maybe you're a little bit of worry, but nothing insurmountable.
Yeah, I think that's good. And I think a little bit of worry gets you, focused and doing some works, but too much, and then you kind of lose the plot a bit. And I think I'm happy where I am with that. It's interesting. We've talked about this before, and it's worth going over what we were talking about when we're talking about failing, because it's different for all of us, isn't it? Because for me, I don't see failure because I don't fear that I'm not going to have enough money to be able to get by. So but I probably will never have enough money to achieve all the dreams I could have. So I'm happy. Yeah, I'm happy with that. And then also, it's not that the other side of failing, the whole feeling like perhaps you're getting by and you're making enough, but it's not worth it, or you're not interested in the business. That's another kind of failure. And I don't feel that either.
Yeah. Okay. I suppose failure is a different thing to different people. If you have aspirations to buy a private jet and you don't achieve that, maybe you see that as failure. Whereas for other people, it might be a little bit more hand to mouth. The failure comes from the fact that this month you've had to tighten your belt so tight that maybe food isn't being put on the table in the way that it once was, and you've had to accommodate or move to somewhere different, or change your life in some way. It's different. I mean, yeah. I think, I don't know where this came from, and I know this to be true for you as well. I've never really had a great desire to have an enormous amount of wealth. I've never been pushed by it. Even as a kid, I remember friends of mine, that I grew up with from a very early age, saying about what they wanted when they were older, and very often it was, well, I just want to be rich, and so they would select a job which would do that, and in many cases, a lot of them have done it, and don't know what their level of happiness is, how I would ever judge that, but that they've done it, and it was something they wanted to strive for. Whereas for me, it was a little bit different. I've always had an impression that for me, the mark of a good life is a happy life. And whilst there's no doubt that happiness hasn't always followed me around, I would say that on balance, I've remained fairly happy most of the time. And so I think failure for me would be not necessarily all about the money, because I don't have lots of money sloshing about, nothing like that. But failure for me would be the inability to be happy, and in that sense, I think I've managed to be happy most of my life. So I'm pleased about that.
Yeah, it's exactly the same for me, and it comes down to freedom being one of the feeling that I'm doing something that's worthwhile, and feeling that I have the freedom to choose what I do that's worthwhile. And I think that's the key thing, and the rest is just the money to sort of make sure that that's always the case. And it's always that way round with me. And it's interesting in our industry, because when you listen to kind of most of the conversations that talk about it, or even courses that are teaching people how to sort of succeed in web design business, they are focused around, monetary figures. And so many people are asking how much they should be charging for a website job as well. And I just think...
Yeah, well, I was just going to say that I don't know what other metric you could hang that on. Really, it's difficult, isn't it? It'd be hard to put a web design course out and claim that at the end of the course you'll just be happier. That would be an extraordinary claim. Whereas, if you follow these instructions, you'll be richer. then that kind of seems to jibe. It's more provable and more straightforward.
Yes, exactly. Well, I don't know. I think, happiness is something that you can easily sell, or freedom as well.
Yeah.
I think that's it. I think, a book that influenced me was the 4-Hour Work Week. But I think most of the stuff that was in there I'd already started to think about anyway. But his concept of the new rich, which is the fact that people now can move where they like, so their income can be lowered, as it is in my case, puts a whole new perspective on it. But he also, when talking about money, he thinks it's a kind of an illusion. The idea that we would want to be earning 6 or 7 figures in a year is kind of a nonsense to him, because the proper balance comes when you set those against the demands on you and your living costs. And I think, I think that's essential. I'm in Vietnam as we're recording this, so I'm easily going to do 7 figures.
Go on, tell us, how does that equate? What does that even mean?
As long as they pay me in the Vietnamese dong.
And what's the sort of current exchange rate for a dong as opposed to a dollar?
I think it's for £1, it's 30k.
Wow.
30, yeah.
So there's lots of zeros on the banknotes.
Exactly.
Yeah. So what about failure? Have you ever had periods in your life where you've kind of really stared this in the face? I know that you said more recently that, if you look at the amount of work flowing through your business, that's definitely taken a hit because of the restructuring that's gone on. Have you ever had periods where you've kind of thrown in the towel or got close to throwing in the towel, where things just, this is not working out?
No, not really. But maybe there are moments like this all the time, a little bit, when you start to do web design for clients, and you sometimes, don't you think, I'm sure you do, that what you do is not really understood by the people you do it for. And there are moments where you think, well, there might be better things to be doing in life.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So that the happiness that comes out of the enjoyment that you do. I have to say, I really do enjoy doing what I do, and I wandered into it largely because I was hobbying, just having a nice time playing around with it and the technology. And I still haven't lost that. I'm still quite addicted to the computer. Given the choice, if there was an empty room with only a computer in it and a television, I would probably migrate over to the computer and start pottering about on the internet than I would watching telly or anything like that. So I still am really into it. So on that level, it makes me happy still.
Yeah. Do you think many people really, because I think so many of us are the same. They've kind of developed out of hobbies, and they've grown and they've increased our income, or they've gone down at certain points. But isn't there always the sense in our kind of community that there's always just something more we can do with the skills that we have? Because they go beyond, don't they? It's into digital marketing, and it's a world of opportunities.
And it's also provably the case. There are some people who are fabulously what's the word? Well, for want of a better word, let's use the word wealthy. They've managed in the online space to generate a lot of money, and we're constantly being sold this, aren't we? Yeah. So I think the opportunities, without question, are there. But I'm sure that most of our listeners can identify with this. They're few and far between. It's not like the world is bending over backwards to throw massive contracts in your direction or to give you an abundance of work. It's difficult. There's a lot of time when you're staring at the screen thinking, where's the next piece of work coming from? And if those sentences get offered too many weeks in a row, then failure, the business failure, the inability to pay your bills suddenly starts to rear its ugly head, and the stress and the strain that comes with that starts to emerge.
Yeah, I'm not sure if we're like traditional businesses. I mean, most of them do the same things. The seeds of their destruction are already there from the beginning. And we were just talking, I was telling you about an old program. I don't think it's on the BBC any longer, called Hotel Inspectors, where some hotel expert would come around and look at a failing business, stay in the place, and then give them a list of what they could do to improve it. And of course, it's TV, so it's really hyped up, and these would be dreadful hotels where they just haven't got a clue. The places would be dirty, the service would be poor, and they would kind of turn these round. There would be lots of arguments, of course, and I think that's the case with many businesses. Will become complacent. They've just got used to it. They're just going through the day to day. So in these hotels, they wouldn't see that they're as dirty as a new guest would see it, because they've just got used to it over 20, 30 years of doing the same. And I think, but I don't think we get this, do you? That kind of failure, because of the nature of what we have to learn all the time, does it attract anybody who can be complacent?
Well, that's a good point. I mean, especially when you're starting out, there's this constant, well, let's say battle, for want of a better word, of trying to find new work. And then, for me at least, at some point, a balance, a sort of equilibrium was reached, whereby I couldn't. There was very little point in constantly going out and seeking new work, and some of my week would be servicing the work that I'd already got, if you know what I mean, and running care plans and things like that. But if you're beginning in this kind of work, I think a lot of the fear is of that failure to get new work, and so there's expectations of, I don't know, staying up late, learning new skills, trying to be the best that you can be. And we've touched on these things in so many episodes in the past. But if you can stay in the game for long enough, then you can succeed. But in terms of kind of planning what businesses do to avoid this, I suppose the only thing that I've ever really done is to try and keep trying to keep some money in the bank, so that what do they call it, rainy day or something, having some money for a rainy day, so that I can weather those moments. And at the beginning, that's really hard because it's hand to mouth. But the more I did, the more that war chest, if you like, built up. But I've definitely had to dip into it from time to time. And I know that a lot of people in the Facebook groups that we frequent, and maybe even some real friends in the real world, have skirted into their finances and got really worried about next month being able to pay the bills and so on. And I don't know what you can do to stop that happening. I mean, people talk about hustle, don't they? Just go out and knock on doors and post things through businesses' doors. I don't really have a solid answer for that, other than making sure that the work you do is really good and you make people happy and get good referrals, and try to keep your business buoyant in that way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have a shared friend who would consider that they kind of failed at it. They decided to pack it in after giving it everything. But they had the same problem, really. They were going from quite a well-paid job, and they had a very short period of time to make it generate a certain amount of income. And they just decided, I'll just go back to my job because it's just so much easier, because they had such a time frame to do that it was not possible. And I think that's very different from how I came into it. I came into it not expecting much.
Well, that's a really interesting point, and I suppose that speaks to the sort of cutting your cloth mentality. If you're starting out, I suppose you have to do a little bit of research, and sometimes I feel that the figures that are mentioned, especially for freelancing, if you're working as a JavaScript developer or something and you're in-house and you're working for a large agency, then I guess those numbers stack up. You ought to be expected to earn X within a year. But if you're a freelancer, I think it's a really different ball game, and I think you've got to, what's the word that I just used? Cut your cloth. That's it. You have to cut your cloth and realize that there'll be times when there's probably too much work, and there'll be times when there's less work, and it's all about kind of managing your client expectations, maybe putting some work off and being honest about that and saying, look, I'm too busy right now, but I will come back to you in a month because my roster is empty then. So managing the amount that you can try at the same time, but also squirreling some money away, so that in the periods where there is a downturn, or you haven't managed to secure some new work but you feel that some is just around the corner, that you've got some left in the bank.
Yeah. Have you had a panic? I think you had a small panic.
Yeah, we had panics, but peculiarly, it wasn't actually to do with my business. It was just sort of to do with the sort of family finances and the fact that other members of the family, their work was going to dry up, and then just through a bizarre set of coincidences, that didn't happen. But it felt like it was going to happen, and I can't remember the length of time, but it felt. Oh, let me cast my mind back. Maybe it was a month or more where the sky did feel like it was falling in a bit, and I was kind of doubling down. And at that point, I was in kind of crisis management, trying to work out, okay, what can I do? What extra things can I do? Can I work more hours in the day? Is there some cash that I'm leaving on the table? Can I reach out to those other people? So I started to formulate all these things that I could begin doing. And in my case, as luck would have it, that problem just evaporated through no endeavour of my own. It just disappeared because the work came back for somebody in my family, and it was all okay.
Yeah,
but it wasn't a nice feeling. It was a very unpleasant feeling because the wool had been completely taken out. It really wasn't. The announcement was utterly unexpected. And suddenly, a lot of our finances were called into question, and I wouldn't like to go through that too many times again. But it speaks to what you said earlier about everything will be all right. Well, I don't like to claim that that's always the case. Of course, it's not, and I'm sure there's many people listening to this who can absolutely attest to the fact that statement is nonsense, and it isn't always all right. And sometimes you do hit rock bottom, but in my case, it proved to be okay in the end.
Yeah, I think, everybody's got different philosophies on this. And in some ways, it'll be okay as a protection, because I think one thing that can kind of kill your business is trying too hard. So, if you're really desperate for the work and you have to try and convince people to come with you, that people are going to smell the fear on you.
Oh, yeah. I've definitely had moments where I have, especially earlier on, when I've submitted proposals and I've caught myself writing the kind of desperate email that goes with the proposal. Too many expressions of, if there's anything I can do for you, of course I'm here all the time, and even sort of bordering into, although this quote might seem expensive, think about the value that you're getting, blah blah blah, and then thinking, oh dear, it sounds a bit of desperation, this, and but also not just that, trying too hard, literally burning the midnight oil, doing too much work, sometimes because I've made mistakes and I have to fix them, sometimes because I just want to learn a new skill. I'm sure we can all identify with working too hard because we haven't got enough going through. But I suppose it's about working smarter, not harder, isn't it? Finding the thing that you're good at, finding the area of your business where the profit really lies, and honing in on that.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it would be hell on earth if I really felt there was the money pressure on, because I just, there are just easier ways, I think, than doing what we do to make a living, So, I mean, there is one other sort of traditional way where businesses go under, and that's just not managing their finances well. They just have a cash flow issue which can sink them overnight that they're not even aware of.
I literally have no experience of this, just because it's always been freelance, so it's just me. So I've got to service the financial needs of my family, and I can directly impact that. We can modify the kind of food that we get, or the type of holiday that we aspire to, or the amount of trips that we take out. We can do that, and that directly affects what the income needs to be. But if you had a business and you had to honour salaries at a certain rate, that would keep me awake at night, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I saw somebody made a comment once, and I just thought, wow, they live in such a different world to me, because I think they were essentially a freelancer. Maybe they employed people to do jobs, but they said they just hadn't been they obviously did a lot more had a lot more clients than I would ever have, and they said they just weren't chasing people up. They were owed so much money. It was they were kind of owed more money than I was earning. So and you just think, well, yeah, I suppose even as a freelancer, it is possible to just delve into the work so hard.
Yeah, it is the most boring thing on earth, I think, though. For me personally, at least, anyway. Looking at the money, I got very disinterested in anything apart from the most casual glance at my bank account. I don't kind of do a great deal. But one of the things that's changed this slightly for me is this new sort of advent of online banks. And when I say online, I mean app-based banks. I don't know if they're the same in all parts of the world, but in the UK, we've got this new swathe of banks, and it presents things in all sorts of ingenious ways on the phone. So I don't have to really log in. My fingerprint does that, and so on and so forth. And that's got me interested in it a bit more. And they have these ways that you can sort of squirrel away a little bit of money over here. And so I've started being a bit more careful about thinking, okay, next year I'm probably going to need this much in tax, rather than just save a little bit when it, panic stations. It's coming to the end of the financial year. Okay, I really need a big block of cash to pay to the tax man. Now because of the capabilities in the app, I'm sort of, okay, 100 quid here, 100 quid there, and it's just wonderful. So I'm sort of getting into all that all of a sudden. But cash flow, I think, is horrible. I've got friends, nothing to do with the internet, who have come dangerously close to going out of business, real bricks and mortar businesses, and they are absolutely in the black by any stretch, but people are just not paying their invoices on time, and so they've nearly had to foreclose because other people couldn't honour their commitments. And I've been very lucky with my clients in that regard. Most of them pay very, very quickly.
Yeah, I certainly know of that, and it's in my family, those issues as well. So, yeah. Do you think then we are a high risk business? I mean, I was in catering in my youth, and that was a high food and drink was at that time at least one of the highest risk businesses. About 1 in 4 businesses succeeded. So
yeah,
do you think
you're trendy or you're not trendy, aren't you? If you're a restaurant. You suddenly you're the talk of the town, and then oh no, we don't go there anymore. I think I don't think so. I think it's one thing I think about it is the older I get, the more it feels like the future is the children's future, if you know what I mean. Of course, that's obvious anyway, but I think the latest developments, I can't keep up with that kind of stuff. So I do feel that when I was a child, there was no such thing as a course that you could go on at university to learn an aspect of the internet. There was basically some fairly rudimentary computer science courses, and I was not interested in computer science. I did not want to do that. But now you can go and get a degree in all sorts of aspects of the online world, and in 3 short years, because you've been able to concentrate on it and you're taught by some expert, you've probably eclipsed the likes of me in your knowledge. And so I suppose that, I feel, is the risk, is that it's evolved so quickly that you can get out of touch. And obviously, children, I shouldn't use the word children here, young adults or young people probably are able to do things that I can't do because I've got commitments, things like mortgages and children to think about. So I probably have to charge more. I think that's where my anxiety in that area lies. I don't think it's particularly high risk, but I think there are risks, and the next generation present them to the older generation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is one of the dangers of specialism, isn't it? In that if you've got a specialism, say you were Adobe Flash programmer, and that's what your business was based around, overnight your business can just go.
Yeah,
and
that's a good point.
And we don't have that because we keep fairly generalist. So, in addition to being able to build a website, we have some other skills.
Yeah. Although that being said, you and I do, being generalist, but there are a lot of people who do, very specific things. They might grow their expertise on a particular thing, which suddenly loses favour. And
Yes.
and there's a lot of people who simply have to, retrain all the time. And I'm in a constant, very mild state of training, whereas I think there's a lot of people who have to really throw the baby out with the bathwater when something changes, especially when they suddenly lose their job and there's no job for, I don't know, a React developer within 100 miles. So I'm going to have to learn something else to get a job working for this particular agency, because that's all that's being advertised at the moment. Actually, React was a bad example because there's probably loads of jobs for that.
There's, one other thing you can do, of course, if you're not getting the business in and it looks like it's failing, the other option is to just kind of tighten your belt. Is that, in your life, is that an option at all? Because you've got kids.
Yeah. Without a doubt, we can always tighten our belt. There's all sorts of things that we could stop doing, going out, buying certain things, stopping, you can adapt the way that you shop at the supermarket and so on. I've definitely had to do this from time to time, without a question, had to do this. I'll come on to a broader point in a moment about more of a philosophical point, but first of all, I'll reflect that question back at you. What about you? Have you had to do that?
But yeah, I think that's exactly why I'm doing what I do now, is because of tightening of my belt. When I was employed and probably when I was earning the most, I ran up the most debts.
Interesting.
And it was that realization when the debts was getting a bit too much that it made me reanalyze how I kind of lived my life and what was important to me and what I could lose that didn't actually make me happy. And it was a ton of wasted money. And then when I got married to somebody who's even better at that kind of stuff, really evaluating what needs to be bought and not, it's made all the difference to me. And it's still incredible today how much we can kind of reduce our costs down. I feel it's like something that people don't look into without losing the quality of life.
Yeah. Well, obviously you've made a decision to kind of like leave the this part of the world, and you spend a lot of your time in India and Thailand and Vietnam and so on. And I do sometimes look around and wonder what my aspirations are. So as an example, we have I don't, as I've said before many times, I don't really watch television, but we have a television. But by any standard, our television is a pretty meager affair. It's several years old. The screen is not all that great. There's a few scratches on it, and you just walk in and you wouldn't sort of go, "Oh, nice telly." You probably wouldn't even notice it. And then the other day, I went to a local shop, which is called, in the UK, we have this shop called Currys. Currys sell all manner of electrical things, but they have this battery of tellies against this wall, and I was staring at them. And I don't know if you've seen the latest generation of tellies. They're enormous. I mean, they are like 6 feet wide. And so made the mistake of taking my kids in there, and my kids were like, well, look at that. Look what we really want this. And it suddenly dawned on me, I don't want any of that. I'm just not interested. Yeah. My telly's perfectly adequate. I'm all right with my telly, and my kids are going to have to be all right with it. And, when they're older, if they can stretch to that, they can do it. So I do agree with you. I think there's so many things that we get caught up in, and this is not meant to sound preachy in any way. This is just me espousing what I've decided, that I've cut my cloth, and I'm not too worried about those material things. Not a lot. So long as the car goes forwards and backwards, I don't really care what it looks like. So long as the telly displays a picture, don't really care what size and shape or what model it is. And if you'd met me in the real world, you'd realise that I don't really have too much of a care for what I wear or the way I look, particularly. So yes, I think we've come to expect an awful lot in our part of the world, and I think it would be apropos for me, at least, to sometimes stare at that and evaluate what do I really need to make me happy. Because as I said before, I think my success is a measure of my happiness.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think, I mean, it was very interesting. Even before we moved out, we saved a lot more money just because, as an example, my wife would just think, well, we buy all this sort of veg from the supermarket. We can go to, and she would just find places where there would be the price that she would expect. So kind of other greengrocers that were better, There were some ethnic shops we went to get certain types of veg in that we wouldn't try. We actually, things actually were improved, even though we were kind of reducing our budget down. We needed to save some money to be able to go traveling. So, but that philosophy still stuck with us, and it's even interesting, even in Vietnam, where the cost of living is much cheaper if you're from the West. We met up with somebody who lives here most of the time, and we took them to the place that we found as a restaurant, and he was really bowled over by how inexpensive and good it was. We have a knack now. Once you get into that habit of finding, and you can reduce your costs down.
It's interesting. This topic, when we started it felt like the pendulum was swinging very much in the sort of negative. All sorts of catastrophic situations we were describing and so on. And it feels like the pendulum is beginning to swing towards the positive, because certainly from my point of view, I do enjoy the conversation of cutting your cloth and not trying to expect too much out of life. And from an environmental point of view, I'm sure that everybody can appreciate that the model which we have in this part of the world where I live, if everybody across the globe was to consume the resources that people in my country do, well, good grief, we wouldn't, we'd be really struggling. So the pendulum's swinging. So in order to push the pendulum firmly in the positive direction, let's concentrate for the last few minutes on just positive stuff, only nice things.
Yeah, let's do that. So I think we jotted a few of these down, didn't we? And the first one is, and I think this has now become my philosophy in life. I think it's just been older, but now I realise that we just will, whatever happens, we'll survive. Death is very unlikely. No one's going to die as a result of our businesses failing. Because even if we are on state benefits, the worst thing that we can imagine happening, we can still use our time as web people really effectively.
Yeah, interesting. Should we go from one to the other? I'll do one that I like. One of the positives I think about the work that we do is there's no boss. I like that. I like the fact that I can get up and do my work in a dressing gown and wear nothing on my feet and so on and so forth. I do like that, and my success or failure is a measure of my own resourcefulness. I like that.
Yeah. Shall I go for, it's a cliche, this one, I'm afraid, but we kind of have to fail a bit, don't we? Else we'll never have any real successes.
Well, I'm going to tell myself that. Yeah, that sounds like a good one. No, I think that's true. You can't judge. You can't judge whether you like something unless you've had something that you don't like. That's true. Yeah. If you haven't, well, even if you've never experienced success, you probably won't feel it in the same. If you've never experienced the lack of success or failure, you probably won't feel the success in quite the same way that if you've been through adversity. Maybe that's a good way of describing it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way to get to success, isn't it? I mean, if you're failing to get business in because it's something to do with the way that you communicate with the clients, it's great feedback for future success, because it's only if you persist in doing the same thing that it's you're not going to get any further.
Yeah. Another thing which kind of ties into that is a positive out of a negative is that the if you spy failure, whatever that means, on the horizon, it will often lead you to do something new and to strive harder and to achieve new things and go in an unexpected direction. And I think that can be good. You might end up trying something you would never have done if you'd been coasting, and end up finding out that, I really enjoy doing that. I mean, you may not. You might discover that all the things that you try are horrible, but nevertheless, it does push you into new directions. I think that can be good.
Yeah, and I think it's still just, I guess I've mentioned this one really, we're just not bound into one thing at all, are we? One niche, one type of client, one approach. We can just take our essential skills, and we can, as I see lots of people do, they will set up an entirely separate business to reach a different niche or client.
Yeah. again, a very mundane thing about this kind of work is one of the things that I really like about it is that you can pick your own hours. So I don't know what time it is where you are, but we started these calls just at 7 o'clock this morning, my time, and it just so happened that I was awake. So off we go. Very good.
Yeah.
And we'll be finished them long before the working day has ended, and I can move on and do different things.
So yeah. So I'm thinking we probably can't fail in our business, really, can we? Because even if we have to go back to a job, which some people have to do, you can still keep this business running as a sideline and come back to it another time.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. I mean, definitely some people are going to fail at this business. And I hope that, if you enjoy this business and you are having a nice time doing it and it's something you set your heart on, I hope that that's not you. But it's been nice chatting around the subject, what it means to us, what makes us happy, what we believe to be ultimately the good reasons to be in this business. And very nice chat indeed. Shall we end it there?
I think so.
Well, there you go. I do hope you enjoyed that. I very much enjoy chatting to David about these kind of open-ended subjects, and in this case, talking about failure. It's something new for both of us to talk about, and so it was very enlightening, and I hope you got something out of it. The WP Builds podcast was brought to you today by WP and Up. 1 in 4 of us will be directly affected by mental health-related illness. WP and Up supports and promotes positive mental health within the WordPress community. This is achieved through mentorship, events and training, as well as counselling. Please help enable WP and Up by visiting wpandup.org/give. Okay, I hope that you'll come back next Thursday and join us for another podcast episode. Perhaps if you can't make that, you could join us on Monday when we'll be reading out the WordPress news for the previous week. And also on Monday, having our live version in the Facebook group. And you can find that at wpbuilds.com/live. We'd love to have you around. We'd love to see you in the Facebook group, wpbuilds.com/Facebook. That's all I've got. I'm going to fade in some cheesy music and say bye-bye for now.